Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. This podcast features technology agnostic and international discussions related to digital strategy, software selection, implementation, change management, business process optimization, and everything else you need to know to make your digital transformation project successful. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you. Now, here's your host, Eric Kimberling.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Hello, welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode 243. This is the tech agnostic podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation, including people, process, technology, and strategy sides of transformation. This is a podcast that covers everything related to AI, ERP, any sort of enterprise technology initiatives you might be undertaking. That's what we cover here today with no vendor spin or bias, of course. And the show is produced by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent tech agnostic consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys. Thanks for being here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting and appreciate you joining here today. We've got a lot we're going to cover here today. We're going to jump right in because we've got a lot of really cool stuff we're going to get into today. First and foremost, we're going to have Brian Perkins on the show, who's a director of IT at a company called Sumitomo Drive Technologies, which is the American subsidiary of a Japanese-owned firm called Sumitomo. And he's going to be on the show talking about this client's AI first strategy that they are embarking on right now. It's a third stage client of ours. We're helping them through that process of defining an AI first strategy without necessarily having to replace their back office ERP system. So this is a really interesting topic that we're going to delve into here today. We talk a lot about AI on this podcast, but this will be the first time we've had an actual use case or case study of a client who's in the midst of going forward with an AI first digital strategy. So it would be really interesting to chat with Brian and learn from his lessons so far and see what kind of tips he has for us all. And then later in the show, we're going to talk about how and if SAP is becoming a lot like the BlackBerry and Blockbuster video in terms of obsolescence on the horizon, strategic obsolescence and product obsolescence. We're gonna talk about that, and it's a video that I produced on my YouTube channel that's sparked quite a bit of controversy. So we're going to play that clip for you, and curious to see what you think about the world of SAP and where SAP is headed as an organization and with their product roadmap. Love to hear from you when we get to that segment later in the show. So to get started, we'll just jump right in. We'll bypass our normal format today of newsworthy topics and questions, and we'll resume those social media questions and answers next week in next week's episode. But for this week, we're just going to dive right into it, starting with Brian Perkins, who is, again, a client of Third Stages, director of IT at Sumitomo Drive Technologies. He's going to join us here to talk about his AI first digital strategy that they're pursuing at Sumitomo. So with all that being said, Brian, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me, Eric.
Yeah, so really interesting stuff that you are focused on here these days in your role. I'm sure you've done a lot of interesting stuff. We've talked about some of the stuff you've done in your career throughout the years, but this is pretty interesting. This is really interesting, the stuff you're doing right now as it relates to your AI approach. And there's a lot of hype around AI. It's a big buzzword. A lot of there's a lot of hype, obviously, around that. So I want to talk here today about what you guys are doing at Sumitomo to approach your AI first digital transformation. So before we get into the questions I've got for you, and we'll get to the audience questions as well, tell us a little bit about yourself, Brian, if you don't mind. Just how did you grow up in this space, and how did you end up where you are now as the head of IT here at Sumitomo?
Well, I started at Sumitomo back in 1994 as an Informix programmer, believe it or not. So that's quite a few iterations of programming languages ago. But through the years, just moved up through the IT organization and have been really in IT management since around 2000.
Great. And What just out of curiosity, just as a high level starting point, what drew you to the world of IT? Like what how did you end up in the IT space in general? Like what led you down this path?
Well, believe it or not, so right out of college, I worked for the state of New York, Office of General Services in Albany, New York, and they actually had a typing pool, and they had this new revolutionary computer program called WordPerfect, and they asked me if I would train the folks in the typing pool how to use word processing, and that's actually how I sort of got my feet into the programming world, and from there I just never looked back.
Yeah, that's how you got started and dipped your toes or tried out the whole IT space, and you couldn't get away from it.
Yep.
Good deal. So tell us just real quickly, if you don't mind, just share a little bit about Sumitomo. What is Sumitomo? What do you guys do? Just for the audience who may not know the company.
Well, we manufacture non-automotive gearbox and gear motors. So we have product that goes on a lot of applications, conveyor belts, mining applications, food and beverage, pretty much a lot of different applications and use cases for our product.
Good deal. And so, you know, you've been a client of ours for a while now, but for those that aren't familiar with Sumitomo and what you're doing here with your overall digital transformation, what does an AI first strategy mean to you guys? Like, tell us a little bit about, you know, how did you come into this world of AI and what led you down this path to start thinking like, hey, we could be using AI right now to automate our business or to make our business more effective. How did we get here?
Well, we came into 2025 and we didn't have a set strategy. In fact, we were, lack of a better term, stuck. We had half of our organization thought, you know, maybe we ought to replace our legacy ERP system that we've had for several years. And then the other half really wanted to look at tools that would augment and complement our ERP system. And I think one of the key things we had to do was sort of get some unification and alignment across not just the executives, but I think most of the core users going forward. Because again, as you just mentioned, AI is a big buzzword. There's a lot of folks who are hearing it, and of course, they're always asking IT, well, what are you doing about AI? And we didn't really, know what direction we should go, so that's why we engaged Third Stage to come in. And I think one of the things in helping us determine a path was really to sit down in workshops with the functional users and say, what are the challenges and pain points that you are experiencing? And when we walked through that process, one of the key takeaways was our ERP system was actually running pretty well. In fact, none of the pain points really pointed to a fundamental switch change of the ERP application. But what we did have a big challenge on is we have a variety of different applications, and really automating or getting data across different applications or data sets was really our biggest constraint and challenge internally.
Right. And what led you to say, let's look at AI first versus, the traditional approach? If we were having this conversation 10 years ago or 20 years ago, we might have said, let's start with an ERP system. A lot of organizations will start with an ERP first sort of strategy, and you guys have said, let's not abandon the ERP strategy, but let's look at other ways of approaching our digital transformation. What led you down this path of not taking that traditional, historically sound approach that most organizations might have done 10 years ago or so?
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons why we sort of really came to this conclusion. The first one was really, we didn't want to have the kind of disruption that normally comes with a big ERP implementation. That was pretty much set forth by our executives. They don't want any disruption to the business, and they didn't really want to have any downtime. And I think overall with an ERP system, we have built a lot of efficiency into the current application. And maybe this is just my experience, but I think you really have to tear down all of your processes to create a new baseline for whichever ERP system you're implementing. So they all have what they call, okay, well, this is best of breed, or, but honestly, what it is a baseline of their applications. And you have to really bring the company down to that level, and then you can start building back up the efficiencies. So we didn't really want to go down that path, but at the same time, we knew we needed to enhance some of the functionality that we didn't have, natively in the ERP system itself. So I think talking about a data set or a data lake that really encompasses all of our data with an AI layer on top of that, it's not disruptive. It's fairly quick to see how the business can take advantage of that kind of value almost immediately without really having to go through a very lengthy, drawn out ERP project. And I say that because at some point we will have to go through an ERP implementation, but I think what we determined is it's probably not right for us right now.
Right. You're not just going to rush into it, or you're not looking at it as a prerequisite or a must-have before embarking on other tech initiatives. How did, just out of curiosity, I mean, you're an IT guy, right? You lead the IT department at Sumitomo. Did others fall into line in recognizing that opportunity to take a different approach, or were there sort of that traditional legacy mindset of, hey, let's replace our ERP system and then we'll go through, we'll add AI layered on top of that afterwards? Or like, how did you navigate that? Was this something that you had to push forward, or how did others receive this idea or this message?
Well, I think we started at the top. So we got the executives to sort of come to an alignment that what the business really needed was those type of tools without having a big change of our actual transactional processes. And again, we looked at our ERP system, and it's running the business quite well. Again, it's not perfect. There's still a lot of things that are missing. But when we really sort of weigh the options of what's going to become more valuable to the organization, it really was, let's look at something that will augment and complement what we currently have.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't look at this as more of I know the title of this is AI first, but I think of it more as a data first approach. So for us, it's really digitizing the data, getting an understanding and getting our arms around all the various systems. I mean, I think we've got over 30 systems that have data, and they're not talking to one another. So I think that's one of the things we're looking for AI to do, is help branch across, disparate data sources and data silos, and really allow the user to get information much quicker.
Yeah. A different approach. I mean, not everyone's thinking that way, and that's what's so interesting is, I think for those of us that grew up in the space, the tendency is to think data first. As you mentioned, data first. Let's get an ERP system. Let's get that in place. And what did you do? Just coming back to this data concept, because you hit a really good point, which is AI doesn't really mean a whole lot or do a whole lot for an organization if the data is not right and you don't have clean, accurate data in the systems that you're working from. But how did you approach that? I mean, what did you find as you got into this? I mean, as far as, was the data okay, or was it a massive undertaking to clean that up, or how did you approach the data side of things?
Well, we're still pretty early in the journey, so I don't have a definitive answer for that yet, but I think there is going to be quite a level of effort that we have to undergo to sort of get some of those data sources pulled into a data lake or a data warehouse. type application.
Right. I'm here with Brian Perkins from Sumitomo Drive Technologies talking about his AI first strategy and some of the lessons learned that he's learning along the way. We've got a lot more to cover. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
How can you see into my eyes like open doors?
I'm excited to announce the release of our 2025 Digital Transformation Report. It's available now on the Third Stage Consulting website, www.thirdstage-consulting.com. This report gives you an unbiased, technology-agnostic insight to help you optimize your organization's projects for success. Get your copy today using the QR code in front of me or on our website.
I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or free guide that we published. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that will allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 243. My name is Eric Kimberling. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. This show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent tech-agnostic consulting firm that I work for. And we help clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys, including this client that we're talking to right now, Brian Perkins. We're chatting with about his AI-first digital strategy. From Minoj on YouTube, I'm a 14 years experience in Oracle and ERP architect. What is the next step that I should take in my career? While AI agents are evolving, would like your suggestions towards career direction. So I guess maybe just as a more general question for you, Brian, from what you've seen so far, I know you're early in the journey. You're just getting started here on this AI transformation you're going through. But what's your prediction here as far as how AI will affect us all, in our careers in IT? And what do you think the major shifts will be, or what do you anticipate will happen here in this world?
Well, I wish I had a crystal ball and I could see exactly where all this is going to land. But
me too. That's why
I'll tell you. Just having a lot of years in experience in technology, this is probably one of the most exciting times, I think, to be in tech. Just with all the moving parts, I think AI is still being defined, because I think it's a buzzword. It's used in marketing. Every vendor is trying to determine how AI is going to apply to them. But I think what we're seeing in the broader market, especially with the news yesterday of AMD and OpenAI having an agreement, I just think and then with Microsoft opening up Copilot to ChatGPT-5, there's so many moving parts in this going forward. It's really exciting to see you're almost waiting. What's next? I think the data centers are still all being built. I think the chipsets all have to be, built and produced. But I think once this really starts to take shape, it absolutely has the potential to revolutionize this industry.
Yeah.
But I think short term for us, what we're really looking for is to allow users to get access to data much faster. If we have the right data, then we can minimize, internal errors that obviously cost us time and money. And for us, a big part of our operating model is to, exceed our customers' expectations, especially on hitting their delivery date for product. And again, one little thing that we can really maximize is trying to decrease the amount of potential opportunities that, come up that are constraints against working towards getting the product out the door.
Right.
And I think AI will definitely help us when we can access all of our corporate data from one place.
Yeah. And speaking of data, this is an interesting question here from Ramakrishna on LinkedIn. And Ramakrishna says, what kind of data harmonization and reporting tools are you envisioning? So, you're talking about the data side of things and how there's a lot of cleanup you've had to do. Tell us a little bit about the whole data journey. I know it's not the most exciting topic to talk about, but but data is it's a necessary evil, right? Especially with AI. It's always been a necessary thing, something that's very important. But now with AI, it's even more important because bad data, if you've got garbage in, you've got garbage out from an AI perspective. But how did you approach the whole, tell us a little bit about, just at a high level, what did the AI or the data harmonization journey look like for you guys?
Well, I think for us, what our approach really is right now is we're targeting specific use cases. So we're not trying to throw all of our data into one big pool and then try to normalize it after the fact. We're taking very specific use cases, and we're trying to align the data that goes to those use cases. And once we sort of have that set, we can understand, what kind of data cleanup is required, if any. But especially when we get to engineering data, we know we've got duplicates in our data set. We've got some other cleanup to do. But whenever we finally get to a point where we feel, that can be normalized easily through an AI tool, then we'll be able to see that through the value that it produces for the specific use case that we're solving for.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think as far as the other part of the question was reporting. So we do use a BI tool, and I think between that and some of the reporting that we do out of our ERP, we'll be able to sort of see what kind of data cleanup we have to do continually.
Yeah. Now, what about looking at specific use cases within Sumitomo's operations? There's a lot of hype around AI. There's a lot of opportunity for AI to automate and to enable better processes for lots of organizations. But a lot of our clients, including yourselves, you start to ask the question of, where do we start? How can we get some low-hanging fruit, some quick wins? How can we leverage AI without trying to boil the ocean? How did you guys view specific use cases, or, how did you identify those use cases that are going to be the most valuable or the most opportunistic in terms of AI use cases?
Well, I wish it was all on, the decisions we made, but quite honestly, it was whenever we had third stage come in and actually walk through the workshops with the users. And when we realized, where are the constraints, where are the challenges and the pain points that we have today, we took those, and then we started to say, okay, what if we could have access across data sets? What if we could have automated processes for notifications or other type of transactions that weren't just within one specific data silo? And I think once we started to dream a little bit, that started to open up some opportunity for, this is how we really ultimately would solve the problem. And then we realized, okay, well, we can't do that just natively within our ERP system. So that's when we started looking at, okay, what are the other tools that we can layer on top of our existing tech stack to sort of solve those issues?
Right. Yeah, and it's a lot of organizations find that you can get lost in AI. I mean, there's so many ways that AI could be helping the organization, but you have to prioritize, right, and figure out which ones have the most immediate opportunity without with the least amount of risk. How did you guys approach that side of it, as far as understanding where? How did you prioritize or narrow it down to where AI could help the most without necessarily, disrupting or getting too enamored with AI, if that makes sense?
Well, I think the first process we really wanted to tackle was really creating that data lake, data pool, and then have agentic AI calls on top of it, because that really will allow the users to start getting access to data or to start seeing trends that today we don't see because we don't have any cross-pollination between the data sources. And I think, going forward, as I mentioned earlier, I think AI is still being defined. So in some cases, is it automating a transaction? Is it just automating a notification to send an email when some triggered event happens? I mean, you could technically say that's not AI, that it could be something that's just more of an RPA, or it could be something more of just a subroutine. But again, I think it's going to be exciting how these tools start to learn, and especially over time start progressing to where they can provide that kind of business value almost immediately.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of AI, is you don't necessarily need to go through the entire ERP, the traditional ERP upgrade to take advantage of it.
Right.
Super interesting. So here's a comment or question here from Dennis on LinkedIn. Dennis says, when shifting to an AI first architecture independent of traditional ERP frameworks, how can organizations design their data and process layers to maintain real-time visibility, ensure interoperability, and prevent fragmentation across business functions? So without getting into a super deep dive masterclass of enterprise architecture here, how do you view your other systems? I mean, how are you conceptually viewing AI in the realm of or within the overall enterprise tech landscape that you've got at Sumitomo?
Well, we're not really changing anything in the core tech stack. So all of our applications are going to stay as is for now. But what we're looking to do is create a interoperability component where basically we can bring the data into a centralized area, and then we can actually start to develop some AI specific triggers, so to speak, on top of that, data lake. So that's how we approached it. There's no real magic as far as data normalization and data cleanup and setting up data structures. We're still in the midst of that, so I don't really have any great guidance to give on that point yet.
Right.
Still to come.
Yeah. We'll ask you again in a few months, and you'll probably have a better idea once you've gone into the line of fire related to that. And this might be a similar question that you can't answer yet, but we'll try it anyway. This is from Darian on LinkedIn. And what's been so far in your journey? I know it's early and there's a lot more to do here, but what's been the hardest part about harmonizing data across 30 plus systems so far? When you look at the data side of AI, what have some of your initial conclusions or findings been?
Well, I think instead of just conclusions, one of the topics that we're still discussing is, how much data cleanup do you really have to do? I think when we started this journey, we heard, well, you don't really have to do any, just sort of throw it all in one big pot and then let AI sort of, normalize it through its processes. But I think when we start looking, again, we're focusing on specific use cases. So we're not just trying to boil the ocean and stick all of our data in a central repository all at one time. We're trying to be very strategic about, okay, what does a specific use case require and from what systems? And then looking at that data and say, okay, do we have to do some very specific data cleanup, or do we just sort of throw it all in and then start trying to run some queries against it?
Right.
So we really haven't got down to too much very specific data cleanup exercises yet.
Yeah.
We're still trying to even determine what data sets we need.
Yeah. And what the status is of the data sets you have and where you need to clean up and all that. I imagine that's a big undertaking. And it's interesting because data's, it's one of those things that you've had it for however long, you've had those data sets, but now you start to look at it like, is that what we need? Is that the real, is that data set going to work for us, in this AI environment that we're entering into? I imagine that's a good point of self-reflection. And it's also good because, a lot of people listening here today, I think, would probably relate to the fact that AI has been a challenge for them. Having clean data and accurate data is a challenge for a lot of organizations, but it gets magnified or it gets underscored by the fact that you're trying to deploy AI now, and AI will not work well or be effective without good data.
Yeah, and I think, especially when we're trying to do data for BI applications, and BI reporting, I think it follows a very similar track. So the first thing you need to do is identify what are the data sets that you really need. And then for us, we were pulling data from different data sources into a BI tool to get that sort of cross-application reporting. But again, that's only reporting. It still doesn't have the detail level that you really need to make business decisions. So I think AI, what we're really hoping is that, the AI will sort of magnify what we're sort of seeing with our BI tool, and really help us to sort of determine where the real true north is. Because right now you can get a lot of, different results, I guess, out of AI. So I think that's part of our process too. We're cautiously optimistic as we go down this path.
Right. Yeah, super interesting. And when you think about how you guys are planning to use AI, what are some examples, or can you share specific outcomes or areas of business value that you expect to get from AI? I think you started to touch on it a little bit a moment ago, but let's dive into that a little bit more. I mean, where do you see, when you were talking about agentic AI a few moments ago, where do you see the biggest opportunities? Like if you're just to back up for here for a second and say, why AI? Why are we even going down this path? What sorts of business improvements or enhancements do you think you'll get from AI?
Well, I think the bottom core for us is twofold. So first of all, it's just access to data quickly. So what we've seen is, I think AI tools have the capability of producing results much faster than if we were trying to write specific reports and BI and make sure all the data was aligned. I mean, it sort of crosses all of your data sets and pulls in a variety of different kind of data to give you the result. And the second thing is really just the notification type transactions. So, when one system is being utilized, for example, for us, we're a big engineering company as well. So, if engineering is pulling out a CAD model to do modifications, we want it to go check the ERP system to see if we've actually sent that model out to a vendor or supplier to make a part for us. And today that's still a manual triggered system. So someone would have to remember, okay, well, we've got to go check to make sure that it's not actually on an open PO. But we want AI to sort of do all that automatically.
Right.
And notify us and say, hey, that's on a PO that hasn't been received yet. So you need to make sure you update the revision or notify procurement that there's a revision.
Right. Right.
And that's just a specific use case that we have for crossing between applications.
Yeah. And I think that's key, though, is to have that clarity around, where do we think we can improve our business and get business value? Because I think, it seems like a lot of organizations right now, a lot of clients we work with are getting almost too enamored by AI. It's there's too much fluff and hype and excitement around it without a clear vision of what it is you want to get out of it. What exactly you're trying to do with your business. And it sounds like that's what you spend a lot of time doing is let's define those areas where we think we can get some quick wins or get some immediate value out of AI. when you think about innovation and risk, and this is interesting from a couple lenses. You think about innovation and risk. How can we be innovative with AI and take advantage of this emerging technology without getting too crazy, without taking on too much risk, especially, I guess I ask this more from a perspective of being a Japanese owned organization that, not to be too stereotypical, but a lot of Japanese firms are risk adverse, right? They don't want to take on a huge amount of risk. And to some, this whole AI journey you're on might sound risky, sounds like a little bleeding edge for some organizations. How did you balance that? How did you balance the need for, taking on innovation and being creative with your use of technology, but at the same time managing risk? How did you balance those two things?
Well, what we like to do is we like to pilot things first before we just go all in, and then we like to scale. So once you sort of prove out, maybe with a small use case, or I think people, when they start to see the potential value of, like you mentioned, a quick win or something of value that you're struggling with today, or a challenge, and if you can sort of mitigate that challenge with some kind of solution, that also starts to get more users engaged. So it gets the users engaged, it gets management engaged, because now they're seeing, hey, this thing can potentially help us. And so we like to pilot first and then scale, because you're right. We are very conservative when it comes to innovation. We're not going to just throw everything, and especially a bunch of money. I mean, we're a manufacturing company, so I'm always competing against bridge mills and other, equipment that's needed on the manufacturing floor. And, it's really difficult to just get, money to just say, hey, we want to go, buy this AI solution.
Right. Just because it sounds fun. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I've got a little extra time on my plate here. Let's go embark on an AI initiative. I'm here with Brian Perkins from Sumitomo Drive Technologies, talking about his AI first strategy and some of the lessons learned that he's learning along the way. We've got a lot more to cover. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Hey, feeling good, like I should. When in Durga, walk around the neighborhood, feeling blessed.
I want to share a little bit of information about Third Stage Consulting and who we are. Third Stage Consulting Group is an independent, technology agnostic provider of consulting services to help clients through their digital transformations. We help with digital strategy and software selection, as well as implementation planning. And during implementation, we provide services related to program management, organizational change, business process improvement, as well as enterprise architecture. These are just some of the services we provide. We have offices in North America as well as Europe and Asia Pacific. So if you'd like to learn more, I encourage you to check out our resource center, which includes a number of resources that will help you through your digital transformation, and you can access that for free using the QR code here or the links below. You can also reach out to me directly if you'd like to discuss your digital transformation and brainstorm ideas on how to improve where you're headed on your journey.
The last thing you want to have happen is for your digital transformation to end up in court. I've been doing this for 20 years and I have seen everything. My name is Marcus Harris. I'm a software and technology attorney focusing my practice on drafting and negotiating software-related contracts and litigating software disputes across the country. Feel free to reach out to us at taftlaw.com. We'd love to talk to you about the litigation process and what you can expect.
Feeling good, like I should. When in Durga, walk around the neighborhood, feeling blessed, never stressed. Got that sunshine on my.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 243. My name is Eric Kimberling. You can find new episodes of this show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. The show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, which is an independent tech agnostic consulting firm that I work for. And we help clients throughout the world with their digital transformation journeys, including this client that we're talking to right now, Brian Perkins, we're chatting with about his AI first digital strategy. So you being the tech guy, I imagine, I would suspect that you're probably a bit more open to this concept of using AI. How have others in the organization, like the average business user, the average employee, how are they viewing AI so far? Are they excited? Are they skeptical? Are they nervous? Like, how would you describe the lay of the land for the average employee at Sumitomo?
I think right now there's a lot of excitement.
Yeah.
So, we've rolled out Copilot. We're Microsoft shop. So, Copilot has been something that we've seen the evolution on. I wouldn't say it was a magical productivity tool out of the gate, but I think as we have seen Microsoft, add and definitely expand out the portfolio of what Copilot is offering, I think it's giving productivity tools to users that, for those who start using them and learning them, they're really seeing a lot of potential value.
Yeah. 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 Makes a lot of sense. Yeah. And it's, I'll be curious to see as we embark on this journey together with you and seeing how, as we get into the details of how AI is going to affect different people in the organization, I'll be curious to see what that journey looks like. Some might be remain excited throughout. I would imagine others get a little nervous or a little scared. There's some uncertainty around, okay, you're putting AI in place to do what? Are you doing it to replace my job? Are you doing it to, take away the heroics that I've typically brought to the table here? If I'm a person that's built this amazing spreadsheet and an amazing set of tribal knowledge that no one else has, there's a lot of pride and value in that, or perceived value. But AI threatens that, right? It makes me potentially think that I'm not as important now that you're putting in these AI tools that can automate a lot of what I've done in the past, or the heroics I brought to the table. Have you seen any of that yet, or do you anticipate that might be a challenge for Sumitomo?
I think in certain areas, I can see where people could perceive it as a threat, but I don't feel AI is mature enough to be at that level yet. I think it could be coming. And again, this is why this is so exciting, because this either has, it's going to really produce the results that is what the hype is all telling us that it's going to do, or, it's going to change and morph into maybe more of just being a productivity tool.
Right.
I think that's what everyone's still waiting on, is what is the ultimate outcome of these AI tools.
Right. And speaking of outcomes, here's an interesting question from another question from Rama Krishna on LinkedIn. Rama says, what kind of specific monetary benefits / ROI are you planning to track, as opposed to qualitative speed to insights benefits? So do you have a business case of sorts that tells you this is what we want to get out of AI, or how it's going to improve our business, or how did you approach the ROI quantitative business case side of things?
So each one of our use cases is slightly different. So not all are just tied to like a financial KPI. So some of them, just having access to certain data events across applications, if those can save us from a potential mitigated risk later downstream, those kind of events, when they do occur, are costly. So, earlier I was talking about, engineering having a revision on a CAD model, and that same drawing is actually being built by a supplier or vendor. If we don't catch it in process, we find it when we receive the part, and then our quality control checks it and says, well, this isn't the right part. Suddenly that becomes, expensive for Sumitomo, because now we have to not only replace and get the right part, but now we're probably expediting because we've lost time.
Right.
So it's also mitigating against, those kind of events and occurrences that cost us money. So each use case has some financial variables attached to it. And again, I think over time we'll start to see, are we reducing our errors? Are we, is the speed and access to data, is that giving us the kind of value that we were hoping to really prove out the ROI?
Right.
We aren't there yet. We're still pretty early in the journey, so I don't really have a lot of metrics to show against.
Right. You haven't done the full benefits realization activity yet to see what benefits we actually got and that sort of thing. So when you think about the traditional enterprise tech landscape, how do you ensure that AI is integrating with that? So, you've got your legacy system, you've got your legacy data, processes, all that stuff. How are you putting this all together? You've got AI, which is obviously very forward-thinking, innovative technology that is new to most organizations. How do you balance that, or how do you introduce AI into a world where you've got these legacy systems and data sets, and in some cases maybe the technology is a bit outdated, but you're still bringing AI into the landscape here? How did you balance all of that? That.
Well, our strategy is basically to pull the data out of all of our current existing systems and pull it into a data lake, data warehouse solution, and then have the AI run on top of that. So we're not actually modifying or changing any of our specific data elements within the applications. Those are all staying as is.
Right.
And we see that as a big benefit because, again, there's no disruption. We don't have to change any of our existing systems to accommodate it. We're actually creating something new. And I think when we're moving in that kind of environment and that kind of model, it actually opens up to where, we're sort of building at greenfield, but it's actually sitting on top of our existing tech stack.
Right. That's super interesting. And what would you advise organizations to do that maybe are working off these semi-outdated or just older legacy systems, but they're thinking about embarking on an AI strategy like this? What are the biggest takeaways or lessons you would share with other peers, IT directors, CIOs, that sort of thing?
I think the biggest benefit we got, because again, when we started this in the beginning of the year, we didn't have a specific strategy to go down. We weren't just saying we're going to go all down this AI journey. I think it was really the workshops and getting the feedback directly from the users to say, where are your challenges, where are your pain points, where are the constraints, and very quickly, I think it not just to IT, but I think to the general departmental users, they realize very quickly it's not necessarily the ERP that's our constraint. The biggest challenge was data. And I think when we realized that sort of opened up, the whole avenue to move in AI. I think if we had just chosen an AI strategy at the beginning of the year, we still would have been fighting this whole, technology obsolescence question about our legacy ERP. But now that we've already gone through that exercise, it really pointed everybody and created an alignment of this is really what we need to do next.
Right. Yeah. And how was it? How were your executive peers perceiving this whole thing? Were they excited about it as well? Were they maybe unrealistic about the hype, or were they buying into the hype? I mean, how did your peers view AI, when you first brought this to the table, or when you guys first started discussing this?
Again, I think the alignment with the executives happened relatively quickly because, again, we were getting realistic, output from those exercises that really was pointing to your, the ERP system. Yes, it's an older legacy system, but it's running pretty efficiently and it's still scalable. So we don't have any huge constraint on the ERP side. And I think once they sort of got comfortable with that, then the next thing was, okay, what's next? And I think the what's next question really started to get some excitement, because then they realized, hey, we can build something that we don't currently have.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. And what about when you think about impacts to the organization, to the average employee job, to just the operations in general? What, I know it's early still, but we're in that phase with you now where you start thinking about how is this going to impact people? How are they going to receive it? How are we going to help them through the journey and through the transition? What early lessons do you have from that, knowing that you haven't gotten deep into it yet? But how organizationally, how do you see this affecting Sumitomo?
I don't really see. I don't think it's really taken hold of the organization yet. I think there's a few key users who are excited about the potential, particularly those that are dealing with some of the biggest challenges and constraints. They really want to solve these problems. I think they're more engaged than other folks. I do feel a lot of people are still on the sidelines waiting to see, is it really going to do what we think it's going to do?
Right. Yeah. A lot still to be determined, right?
Right.
So for those fellow CIOs and IT managers that are listening in here today, and they're thinking about potentially embarking on an AI journey like what you're embarking on right now, what big lessons or takeaways do you have? I mean, what's the, if you had to give one piece of advice to people that are just getting going on this journey, that are a little behind where you are, but they're ready to dip their toe into AI and start deploying AI within their organizations, what's the big takeaway you've got so far, the big lesson?
I would say try to get that organizational alignment up front, because that gives you momentum, and that momentum then bleeds to more engagement from individuals. And I think specific to AI, I think it's, also approach it with some caution, because again, what is it that you're really defining? I mean, is it true artificial intelligence, or is it really more of a subroutine or RPA that a vendor has? And I think, even for us, we don't know all of the pitfalls yet. We're still in the journey, and so I think there's still a lot of that, being cautious and moving at a very mannered pace, so we don't get too far down a path that suddenly we're like, okay, this isn't really that valuable.
Right. Yeah, it's good. It's good advice. Good takeaway for those that might be embarking on a similar type of journey. All right, thank you, Brian. Great conversation. Really appreciate having you on the show and sharing your lessons here along the way. I know it's early in the journey. There's a lot more to learn as he and his team and our teams work together to go through this AI first strategy and path that they're headed down. So we'll have to have him back on at some point in the future to get an update and see what new lessons he has as he continues through the journey. So thanks very much for being here today, Brian, and thank you for the great audience questions as well. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, stay tuned, because we're going to talk about SAP and whether SAP is becoming obsolete, just like Blockbuster Video and the BlackBerry smartphone. So stick around. We'll get to that here in just a moment. We'll be back with more Transformation Ground Control.
Met her in a club down in Old Soho, where you drink champagne and it tastes like Coca-Cola. C-O-L-A.
If you are aiming for transformation success, turn to Third Stage Consulting Group. Third Stage's independent and technology agnostic consulting team helps clients define their digital strategies, define their roadmaps, and manage their transformations. With offices in the US, Europe, and Australia, our team helps the world's most forward-thinking organizations through their transformation pitfalls and risks. If you are embarking on a digital transformation or business change initiative, contact Third Stage Consulting to see how we can help you reach the third stage of transformation success. Learn more about us and download independent reports, videos, and other best practices at thirdstage-consulting.com.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry. engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So, collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 243. My name is Eric Kimberling. You can find new episodes of the show every Wednesday by going to transformationgroundcontrol.com. And the show is sponsored by Third Stage Consulting, an independent tech-agnostic consulting firm that helps clients with their digital transformations. And it is produced by Major Tom Productions. So if you'd like to collaborate with us on content on this podcast or any of the other content and thought leadership that we put out in the marketplace, we'd love to hear from you. I've included contact information below for collaboration opportunities. So be sure to reach out if you want to collaborate on this podcast or other formats that we produce content for. I want to play you a quick video here. Speaking of other formats and other social media outlets, this is actually a YouTube video I posted recently that sparked a lot of conversation online, and it is my hypothesis that SAP is at risk of becoming obsolete, much like Blockbuster Video and much like the BlackBerry handheld device. And so reason for that I'll explain in the video, but I also play devil's advocate with myself in the video too and talk about why I might be wrong. So it's really meant to spark a conversation here. I'd love to hear your feedback as we're going through this video here, as we're playing this for you. Love to hear your feedback on what you think about this argument I make for and against the case for SAP's potential obsolescence here in the future. So with all that being said, let's roll the clip. Early in my career, I started as an SAP consultant. In the late 90s, I was certified in SAP. The first few years of my career were focused on helping clients implement SAP, and so I became very familiar with the world of SAP over the years. Now, since then, my team and I continue to be involved with SAP implementations, but being tech agnostic, we also work with a plethora of other types of technologies. So the question you may have is, what does SAP have to do with Blockbuster Video and the BlackBerry device? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today, is how I think the future of SAP is going to look a lot like how Blockbuster Video and how the BlackBerry navigated their competitive threats and challenges, and that's what we'll talk about here today. And be sure to stick around until the end of the video, because I'm going to play devil's advocate with myself and talk about why I might actually be wrong. And along the way, I'd love to hear your comments in the comments below. What do you think the future of SAP holds? Do you think they're on the right path, or do you think they're in trouble? I'd love to hear your comments below. Now, if you'd like to learn more about how to make your SAP project successful if you are implementing SAP, I encourage you to read our Guide to Successful S/4HANA Implementations. You can find that guide by scanning the QR code right here, or you can go to the links below. The first reason why I think SAP is on a path towards potentially becoming obsolete in the future is because they're following a similar strategy that Blockbuster Video and the BlackBerry pursued. Let's start with Blockbuster Video. Back in 2000, Blockbuster Video was offered to buy a company called Netflix for $50 million. And at the time, Blockbuster was still a bricks and mortar rental company. So you could still go there to rent DVDs. You paid for each title you rented. You would get exorbitant late fees if you didn't return it on time. And there's a limit to the amount of videos you could check out at any given time. Documented accounts of that meeting between Blockbuster Video and the founder of Netflix were that Blockbuster essentially laughed at the idea of buying Netflix for $50 million. And it goes even further to note that in 2000, Blockbuster Video thought that the internet was overblown. They thought that it was too high of a valuation to buy Netflix for that price. And they didn't think that people would want to rent videos through the mail, which, if you don't know this, before Netflix became a streaming powerhouse, you could actually by mail receive the DVD movies. This is before streaming, but you could get the same DVD movies that Blockbuster is renting in person. You could actually get it in the mail, and you could get unlimited titles. You could get 3 at a time or whatever the number was. You finish watching, you send it back, and then the next title on your list would get sent to you automatically. You could keep the DVDs as long as you wanted. It was a set subscription fee per month, which Blockbuster didn't like that either. So Blockbuster resisted the idea of breaking their business model. They turned down the offer, didn't even counter offer anything to buy Netflix. And now here in 2025, Netflix is worth over $500 billion. So a $50 million investment that could have turned into $500 billion and kept the company alive, presumably, is what they missed out on. And more importantly, Blockbuster failed as a company and they no longer exist. Now let's look at the BlackBerry. The BlackBerry was riding high. They were the dominant smartphone provider in the early 2000s. Everyone loved their BlackBerry. I know I loved mine. And Apple suddenly in 2006 came out with something called an iPhone. And at the time, Apple was a computer company. That's all they did was make laptops and other related devices. And the thought of Apple coming out with a phone was mocked by some. People thought that there was no way that Apple could succeed in this space. And not only were they laughing at Apple because Apple wasn't known as a phone company, but they also scoffed at the idea of a phone without a keyboard, without a physical keyboard. And the executives of BlackBerry actually, again, laughed at and scoffed at the idea of a phone without a keypad, and they insisted that that model would never fly, both because it didn't have a keypad and because it was Apple, and BlackBerry was dominating at the time. Now, we all know what happened to BlackBerry. The company does exist, but the BlackBerry device does not have the same level of prominence and cachet as it does now, and of course, we all know that the Apple iPhone dominates the smartphone market and has for the last 20 years. So what are the similarities that I see with SAP? Well, let's look at SAP. It's an old, outdated architecture that's still based on the old NetWeaver architecture back when SAP was on-premise with R3 and ECC. They're heavily dependent on vendor lock, these big companies that have trouble moving away from the systems that they're using. And so they're relying on these big companies being somewhat complacent and continuing to pay maintenance for an old SAP system, or what they're doing now is trying to get as many of those customers to shift over to their cloud offering, which is S4HANA. And they're doing this by putting deadlines in place with their customers to basically force them to move from the old SAP to S4HANA, because they're going to cut off support for ECC and R3 at some point in the near future. SAP is also missing out on the whole trend toward composable ERP. The single monolithic ERP model is dying and it's becoming obsolete, but yet SAP is still heavily invested in that model. And if you think about it, why would SAP move away from it? That's been their bread and butter for the last 40 or 50 years, and they've done very well with it. And to change that would be very painful for them as a company. So they're almost locked into this strategy and this path that they're going down. And that's another big reason why SAP is at risk. And I think the biggest way that I see SAP being a lot like Blockbuster Video and the BlackBerry device is that they are completely misreading their customers' needs. They think that because they're SAP, they can force their customers onto S4HANA and people will just tolerate it because it's SAP. Now, in some cases, there are companies out there that feel like they don't have a choice, but the bad news for SAP is that there is an increasing number of choices out there that will eventually chip away and continue to chip away at their market share until who knows what will happen in the future. So this hubris, this arrogance, this misreading of customer needs, and this failure to recognize where the market is headed is the biggest reason why I think SAP is headed down the path of Blockbuster and BlackBerry. Another reason why I think SAP is in trouble strategically is because they have built a massive echo chamber. And it wasn't their intent to build this echo chamber, but they've unintentionally created their own echo chamber that creates a bias, that creates a false sense of superiority in the market. And what I mean by ecosystem is, first of all, SAP is a massive company. They employ tens of thousands of people. So there, right there is a massive army of supporters and people that are towing the company line, they're drinking the Kool-Aid, and they're fully supportive of what SAP does, no matter what they do. But that's just the beginning. On top of that, you have all these SAP partners throughout the world that are heavily compensated by SAP to go out and sell more SAP software. This is perhaps the most challenging part because there are just so many implementation partners that are out consulting to organizations, convincing them that they should be deploying SAP technology. And then the third layer of this is the industry analysts. SAP is a huge supporter of the leading analyst firms. They are a big customer of these leading analyst firms. So you get big analyst firms with the credibility, the third-party validation that SAP is an awesome product and you should be buying SAP. So you take these three layers of the ecosystem and you've created a massive echo chamber that is good at selling software, but it also creates a false sense of security and a false sense of making the right decisions, which I think is what's happening at SAP right now. If you're SAP and you go out and look around, you have all these people telling you how great of a job you're doing and how awesome SAP is and how it's in the upper right corner of some magic quadrant somewhere. And that's one of the biggest challenges, is those blind spots that are percolating under the surface where customers are actually very upset with SAP right now. They don't hear it, they don't see it, largely because of the arrogance and hubris that I talked about before, but also because they have this echo chamber of a machine that they've built over the years. Another reason why I think SAP is headed down the path of BlackBerry and Blockbuster is because they just simply can't change fast enough to keep up with the evolving space. Now, in some ways they have, they've invested heavily in AI and they've been fairly quick to respond to the whole AI movement, but they were very slow to migrate to the cloud and to get their product in the cloud. And they're still working on it, by the way. S/4HANA is still not a complete, fully developed product. There's still a lot of capabilities that had been in the old legacy systems that haven't yet been built in S/4HANA. And perhaps most importantly, most of their customers that were using an old on-premise version of SAP still have not started their journey toward SAP HANA. So all these are big warning signs for SAP in that they just are going to have trouble changing as an organization. They're having trouble getting their customers to change, to follow them to S/4HANA. And it's just creating a lot of strategic problems for SAP. Now, the other part of this that I alluded to earlier in this video is that SAP is going to move slowly, a lot like how Blockbuster Video was slow to respond to the whole movement towards mail order, DVDs, and eventually streaming. And that if they were to do that, they risk cannibalizing their own product, their flagship cash cow, which right now is S/4HANA. Historically, it had been maintenance on the old systems that they were supporting, but now it's S/4HANA. And so that cash cow is at risk if you go and change the business model. And add to the fact that you have all these purists out there that are in that SAP ecosystem and echo chamber that I talked about, you can see how difficult it would be to change the overall strategy and direction of SAP. But yet, at the same time that SAP is slower to change, you have all these upstarts, all these new companies that have come and gone, that have developed, they've chipped away at market share and made things more difficult for SAP. Great examples of this are going to be Salesforce on the CRM side or Workday on the human capital side. These two companies came along and really disrupted SAP and other big ERP vendors because they provided a more focused solution that wasn't trying to be everything to everyone, and they did it better than SAP and other big vendors could themselves. So these are just some of the reasons why some of these big software vendors are going to have trouble changing, including SAP. So I've shared some of the reasons why I think SAP is headed down the path of the BlackBerry and Blockbuster Video. But what if I'm wrong? What might those reasons be why I'm wrong? Well, first of all, I'd love to hear from you. Drop in the comments. If you think I'm wrong, tell me, because I want to hear about it and I want to hear why. And if you agree, of course, you can tell me that too. But the reasons why I might be wrong are threefold. One is big companies that are customers of SAP are more hesitant to change. They're slower to change. They're more comfortable with the status quo. And if they're already an SAP shop, it's going to be really hard to convince them to move in a different direction. That's the first thing. The second thing is that a lot of executives in these big companies still feel like they might not have any other viable alternatives. There's a common saying out there that nobody ever got fired for hiring IBM, and sometimes people will apply that same logic to SAP as well. They think, well, at least I'm going with the gold standard in the industry. If this thing fails, at least I did my best to find a software that was well known and well respected. And that creates, again, a false sense of security. And the third reason why I might be wrong in terms of SAP becoming obsolete someday is because their footprint is so big in some of these big, massive companies. If you think about a company with, say, 50,000 employees, and they've got tens of thousands of people using SAP, it's just hard to replace that. It's going to take some time for that to go away. And if you look at even the mainframe back in the 70s and 80s when companies were using the old, big, outdated mainframes, there are still companies using that technology today, not because it's great technology or people love it, just because of inertia and people's unwillingness to change, and organizational speed to change can be slow. So you add up all these things and you think, well, maybe SAP will be around for a little longer than I think, but I think strategically they still are making the wrong decisions. And I think ultimately, whether it's in 5 years or 20 years, we will see the fall of SAP if they continue down the path they're going right now. But I'd love to hear from you, whether you're in the SAP ecosystem or whether you're not. I'd love to hear your feedback. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? Do you have other thoughts to add to the conversation? Let's get a conversation going below in the comments. And if you'd like to learn more about how to make an SAP implementation more successful, be sure to download our guide to SAP implementations. You can find that by scanning the QR code right here or go to the links below. So that's the clip about why I think SAP might be headed down the path to obsolescence. I'd love to hear from you, though. What do you think? Do you think I'm off base? Do you agree with me? Do you have other things to add to the conversation? I'd love to hear from you, because I think this is a really pivotal time for SAP and other ERP vendors, for that matter. It's not even just SAP necessarily, but SAP being the largest of the ERP vendors, sometimes takes the brunt of the good and the bad of the ERP industry. So I'd love to hear your feedback, though, whether you're part of the SAP ecosystem or not. I'd love to hear your thoughts on where you think SAP is headed and what you think the future holds for SAP and other larger ERP vendors as well. So drop those in the comments, and hopefully we can get to some of that discussion or get to some of your questions and comments in next week's episode. So thanks for watching here today. Appreciate you joining. Again, new episodes every Wednesday. Go to transformationgroundcontrol.com to watch all the past episodes. Every episode going back to episode 1 back in 2021. You can watch all of them. So they're all out there for your consumption. Feel free to scroll through the topics there. We've covered a lot of good stuff here over the last few years. And there's plenty out there that you may not have seen yet. So be sure to check it out at transformationgroundcontrol.com. Be sure to reach out to me if you want to chat about anything related to your digital transformation, or you'd like to learn how Third Stage can help you through your journey, even if it's just informally, having an informal chat about your project. Love to chat with you. So be sure to reach out. I've included my contact information below. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next week on the next episode of Transformation Ground Control.